The city was alive with its usual chaos, cars honking impatiently, footsteps echoing across the pavement, voices blending into a restless hum. In the middle of that ordinary rush, something unexpected happened. A woman, elegant in her appearance and clearly from a life of wealth, suddenly faltered. Before anyone could react, she collapsed onto the hard concrete, her handbag sliding away as people gasped. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Strangers gathered quickly, forming a circle around her, but hesitation clouded every face. Some whispered, some raised their phones to record, while others simply stood rooted to the spot. Fear of getting involved, of responsibility, of being judged, kept them frozen in place. It was a silent wall of inaction that grew taller with every passing second. Then, cutting through the murmurs, a figure pushed forward. Dressed in a simple uniform, with worry etched across her face, the woman's maid rushed to her side. She dropped to her knees, gently lifting her employer's head and calling out her name, her voice trembling yet firm. Sweat formed on her brow, not just from the summer heat but from the weight of urgency pressing down on her. She didn't think about who was watching or what people might say. While the world stood back, she chose to step in. In that moment, the sight of a maid kneeling in the dust beside a millionaire's wife was more powerful than any words the onlookers could have spoken. It was humanity in its truest form. The maid's arms trembled as she tried to steady her employer, realizing the woman was too weak to rise on her own. Panic rippled through the crowd, but still no one offered help. A few people muttered that an ambulance had been called, others simply stared, waiting for someone else to act. The maid glanced around, desperation in her eyes, then made a decision that surprised everyone watching. She bent lower, slid her arms carefully beneath the woman, and with every ounce of strength in her small frame, hoisted her onto her back. Gasps spread through the crowd. It was a startling sight, this slender maid carrying a woman dressed in jewels and silk, her heels dangling helplessly as her body draped over the maid's shoulders. Step by step, the maid pushed forward, her breath heavy, her knees wobbling, yet her determination unshaken. Sweat rolled down her temples, but her grip never faltered. Some bystanders raised their phones higher, filming the scene as if it were a spectacle, while others whispered in disbelief. But the maid didn't hear them, her only focus was the faint heartbeat against her back and the thought that she must get her to safety. With every step across the busy street, she carried more than just her employer, she carried courage, loyalty, and a love for humanity that no wealth could measure. In a city full of strangers who chose silence, one woman's strength became louder than the crowd's hesitation. At the hospital, bright fluorescent lights flickered as doctors rushed the unconscious woman inside. The maid, drenched in sweat, stumbled after them but collapsed onto a bench, her chest heaving from exhaustion. Moments later, a sleek black car screeched to a halt outside. A tall man in an expensive suit stormed in, the millionaire himself. His eyes immediately found his wife on a stretcher, tubes and wires now attached, doctors working swiftly to stabilize her. Relief flickered across his face, but then his gaze shifted. There, slumped in the corner, sat the maid. Her uniform was damp, her hair disheveled, her arms trembling from strain. For a moment, the millionaire didn't understand. Then a nurse approached and spoke softly, "If not for her, your wife wouldn't have made it here in time." The word struck him like thunder. He turned again, really seeing the maid. This fragile woman who had carried his beloved through the streets when no one else would. He approached slowly, his polished shoes echoing against the tile. The maid tried to stand, but her legs buckled, and she sank back into the chair. Her eyes held no complaint, no expectation, only relief that her employer was safe. The millionaire's throat tightened as he realized the truth, all his wealth, all his influence, had meant nothing in those crucial minutes. It was her selflessness, her humanity, that had saved the woman he loved most. And in that moment, his world shifted in a way he never imagined possible. Later that evening, when the chaos of the hospital had calmed, the millionaire found himself standing in front of the maid's tiny living quarters. It was a stark contrast to his grand estate, bare walls, a narrow bed with a worn blanket, and a single flickering bulb that lit the room. On the wall, taped carefully, were drawings made by children. Crayons on paper, simple words of love in uneven handwriting. He paused, realizing these were her treasures, her reminders of why she worked so tirelessly. She looked startled when he entered, trying to rise to her feet, but he gently motioned for her to sit. His gaze softened as he scanned the room once more, humbled by its simplicity. For the first time, he saw not just his wife's maid, but a woman carrying the weight of her own struggles, yet still strong enough to carry another when it mattered most. "Why?" he asked quietly, his voice heavy with emotion. "Why would you risk so much for her?" The maid lowered her eyes, her hands folded tightly in her lap. After a moment, she spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Because in that moment, she wasn't a millionaire's wife. She was just a human being who needed me. And humanity comes before titles." Her words hung in the air like a truth he could not escape. For all his power, he realized he had never understood the depth of such loyalty, the courage that could only come from a heart that valued people over status. The next morning, the millionaire returned to the hospital with his wife, now awake and recovering. Together, they asked the maid to join them in the private room. She entered nervously, her hands fidgeting, unsure of why she had been called. The wife reached out first, her eyes glistening with tears, and took the maid's hand in hers. "You saved my life," she whispered, her voice breaking. "No words will ever be enough." The millionaire stepped closer, his expression softer than it had ever been. He looked at the maid not as a servant, but as the very reason his family was still whole. With deep sincerity, he said, "From today, you are not just our maid, you are part of our family." The maid's eyes widened in disbelief as he continued, promising to secure her children's education, improve her living conditions, and give her the dignity she deserved. For the first time in years, she felt seen, valued not for the work of her hands, but for the purity of her heart. Tears rolled freely as the wife embraced her, and even the millionaire struggled to keep his composure. The once invisible maid was now at the very center of love and gratitude. As sunlight streamed through the hospital window, the moment carried a quiet power. It was a reminder that true wealth was never found in gold or status, but in kindness, loyalty, and the courage to act when others stood still. Humanity, at its purest, had transformed them all.